About 5 years ago, I was in a dither, as I can tend to get, which is why it's critical that I not only practice yoga, but also teach it and write about it, lest I self-implode. In that dither, I realized that my worst linguistic nightmare might in fact be true. Now, I've got a hunch that you might not be so inclined to put your trust and faith in a yoga teacher who gets in a dither over vocabulary words, which is completely justifiable. I'll beg just a few more moments of your time, and then you can decide if you'd rather just click back into cyberspace onto some other edifying and inspiring web page, perhaps abandoning the peace, happiness, and good times that are in store for you at thebefriendingproject.com. Ah, well, you'll be missed. I typed the email as fast as my fingers would allow. What happens if a society lacks the word to describe an experience? That's the question I posed to a linguistics professor at the University of Virginia, who I'd never met or spoken with, after discovering a recurring experience as a yoga instructor. An experience that was getting on my nerves, which I refuse to tolerate now that I know the joy of being relaxed and energized most of the time. It was bugging me that more often than not, I had to resort to using a sentence and sometimes a paragraph to explain a single Sanskrit word that was relevant or even critical to the day's lesson. The cordial answer that also generously included several articles, one of which I'm embarrassed to say I just read a few months ago, the reply I received was what I had sadly feared. If a word is absent from a language, and that word expresses an aspect or capacity of the human experience, the experience is potentially lost to that culture. Lost. That made me sad for about 2 seconds. Fine, I thought to myself, I'll hijack some English words to get the point across to my students. They and you so deserve to have access to the best of what humanity has to offer. And some of that, I believe, is wrapped up in the philosophy of Samkhya and Yoga, which use Sanskrit words that have often no English corollary. Don't confuse Samkhya with Satmya. Now, you might ask, why not just use the Sanskrit word frequently so it becomes familiar? Well, look what's happened to the word mantra. It's come to mean slogan rather than a series of sounds repeated silently thousands of times to create permanent change on the subconscious and cellular level. See what I mean about the paragraph? Meanwhile, the word's assimilating, but the meaning, it's getting lost. I'm going on a hunch here, but it seems that as long as we're using another language like Sanskrit, we seem to keep it at arm's length. Without purposely or consciously doing so, we act as if the idea belongs to someone else, some other group who owns the word and the experience, attitude, and action it describes. Instead of feeling at home with the word and what it describes, we feel like visitors. Foreign words like satmya and mantra may be curious, pleasant, or even potentially helpful, but can tend to remain at a distance, foreign, otherworldly. For English-speaking people like you and me, from where I see it as a yoga instructor, Sanskrit words, which are the foundational traditional language of yoga, are having a tough time assimilating into our vocabulary. Sadly, the experience those missing words are describing or intending to evoke in us is potentially lost to us. Now, in stark contrast, may I hear a round of virtual applause for the word email? Our brain had no resistance whatsoever to the familiar word mail, and upon learning that the E stood for electronic, as fast as you can click your mouse, our collective brain, called common knowledge, said, okay, email it is. So that's the process that's involved in my heart and head that's led to the hijacking of the English language for the purpose of helping us find some peace. An ing word, the word of the week, will appear in large bold print at the beginning of each post. We'll see what happens when we deconstruct and then reconstruct English words so we can enjoy playing out of bounds, no longer limited by our current vocabulary. Note, if you're a dictionary editor, I come in peace, and you're welcome for any part that this website may play in contributing to your future job security. Namaste. Have a nice day. See what I mean? Word assimilating, meaning getting both lost and expanded in a metaphysical magic trick. Hey. In a future post, I'll tell you why the word of the week will always end in ing and about an article I finally got around to reading just a few months ago, one that the kind-hearted linguistics professor had sent me about 5 years earlier. In that article is a tidbit of knowledge that's unlocked the mysterious treasure trove that I call the power of present participling, which is a lot easier to think about and write than it is to say. Now, it turns out this idea, for which I'd been patting myself on the back for creating 4 or 5 years ago, turns out to have been the means of communication for the native people of Vancouver Island. Ah well, so much for being full of myself and all the back patting. Golly, it's painful when the balloon of the inflated ego pops upon learning that one's novel idea turns out to have been done before. Dang. That's all I've got to say about that for now. You are not ready for the rest of the story yet, but you will be. First, you need to learn how to breathe. And that, my friend, is the history of playing with words that we're calling the Word of the Week. When you subscribe to thebefriendingproject.com, a reconstructed Word of the Week, my pontificating, and the short focusing and relaxation exercises that accompany it will be delivered to your email box, which isn't a box at all now, is it? See you around.